Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast, The Doom of Fools. Today, I know I say it every week, but today we have the most special guest. Some people call him Kinnan's dad. I don't know, but he's the original Kinnan player. We got Tyler from Play to Win. What's up, Tyler? How you doing, buddy?
Doing well, Josh. Thank you. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. I'm in Florida. It's Labor Day,
Nice sunny weekend.
everything's good. What's funny is my wife just went to Tennessee and my other two boys they went with their godmom, and my daughter went with her grandparents, and I have five kids, so two of my kids were just chilling in the house all weekend pretty much, and I'm loving it because I work outside
Oh,
because it's
nice.
110 degrees outside. I'm gonna fry an
You
egg
said
on the pavement.
surveyor, right?
Yep. That's cool.
Yeah,
So,
I hear that. My boyfriend ends up working outside for similar work,
cool.
environmental remediation and water tables and that kind of stuff. So
Oh, that's
I hear
awesome.
it from him all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, someone tried to get me to do that one time, and I just didn't know. I don't have any experience in it, and I have too many kids to like just jump for something I don't know. But that sounds,
Yeah.
dude, that sounds awesome. I'd love to touch on that. But anyways, we're not here for my love story of the Heat. We are here with Tyler, dude. What is your background? Like, how'd you get into Magic, and how'd you get in CDH, and what made you sleeve up this Simic King God Kennen himself?
Well, I played a little bit of Magic when I was in high school, but it was very much just kitchen table Magic. I had a close friend, and his brother was, really into it. I think probably played at card shops and small tournaments and that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
my friend and I would just play with his kind of leftover cards. So did a lot of kitchen table stuff then and kind of put it down throughout college. And then a little after college, I was driving back from Connecticut, where I was working at the time, back to my area in Pennsylvania
Mhm.
because I hate Connecticut. And my friend literally just saw me on the highway and called me and said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Nothing. I just don't want to be in Connecticut." And he said, "Well, I'm going to go play Magic. There's a pre-release, so we're going to do a midnight sealed event, and you're coming with me now." And I said, "All right." So that was Born of the Gods. I played that sealed Born of the Gods pre-release, and I got hooked again and got more serious about it.
Mhm.
That group of friends was really into Commander, so for the first maybe 3, 4 years that I was playing, I only played sealed, not draft, and Commander, and I would play nothing else. um, so that was the beginning. But I think early on, I really was interested in, highly synergistic decks, and I didn't like infinite combos, but I did like really pushing the power level and fast mana and all that stuff. So kind of before I had the vocabulary of CEDH, I was sort of the problem player in a casual group who's, pushing things too far and picks up a mana vault and all that jazz.
Mhm.
So this ended up being useful for CDH because picked up a lot of these staples really early when they were cheap, and I was just pushing my casual decks too far. Um,
Right.
but I've always loved Simic. Edric was one of my favorite decks that I thought was casual. At now I would probably call it like a proto CEDH deck in a lot of ways. But
Mhm.
um, loved that. Loved I played mono Thrasios, just Thrasios when that came out for quite a while, and was playing Seedborn strategies in Commander.
Monothrasios.
Yeah,
I
when they
love
spoiled
that, dude.
partners,
I love that. I'm gonna
I
build
was
one now.
furious. I said the partners are too good. Like Wizards is like ruining this by printing new design space for Commander, and
Mhm.
I felt that part of the reason Commander was successful initially was not because Wizards was pushing the power level for that format.
Mhm.
I still think they shouldn't be, but in order to prove this point, I decided I was going to build a bunch of the partner commanders that I thought were really good as just on their own, just to say these are good enough on their own.
Yeah.
And the first two I built were just Thrasios and just Timna. Like this was, eight
Orzov?
years ago now,
Oh,
or
gross.
whenever they came out, maybe seven. Yeah. Well,
Right.
the Timna one was horrible to play against because it was just a ton of shadow creatures, so they're going to get through for damage because nothing
Right.
can block them.
Yeah.
And then a ton of board wipes. The logic being, if I draw enough cards, I can just board wipe every time my opponents are threatening, and then rebuild faster than they can because of the card draw.
Mhm.
And it works, but it was miserable to play against. Board wipes
Right.
every 2 turns is not a fun way to play.
Well, it's Orzhov. That's what it's good at. And removal. You
Yeah,
had
pretty
the
much.
best removal in the
Hmm.
game. You're like, come at me. Come at me, bro.
Yep.
Oh, that's hilarious. Just Thrasios and just him. Now I have to find this list. So does that mean you could add
I,
an extra card in your deck then?
yeah, 99 plus those.
That's hilarious. And I think I love Partner the Mechanic. I think that was a good idea. It's fresh, right? But I think the two color partner, like Thrasios, the Timnas, the Croms, that's the problem. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like Vile, Silas, like those decks, Rogside, no one plays Silas. Thras Vile, nobody plays the Vile. So I think that was a mistake. When you're playing a card just for the colors, I think that's an issue. But I mean, here we are. Like, whatever
yeah,
at the end of the day. But yeah, if Thrasios was just green or Timna was just white or black, it would be fine. It wouldn't be
yeah. I
format
think you're right.
warping, right? And those are probably the two best commanders in CEDH because they're two color partner, right? If they didn't
Yeah,
say partner on them, they wouldn't be the format warping. But that's all right. We're not here to talk about mistakes and not mistakes. You know, I have three Thrasios decks, and I have a Timna Sakashima deck, which I enjoy so much.
nice.
Delny says, take 12 life, draw 12 cards with Timna Sakashima, and I'm here for it.
Oh,
People are
Delney's
like,
awesome in
what?
so many decks.
Oh my god, I love that stupid card. Before we get into
Yeah.
Kinnan, is there any other decks that you like is your favorite or like maybe another like format or something? I saw you on a Get Rog the other day. But is there any like other deck or is it just strictly Kinnan? Like Kinnan, nothing else ever.
Um, it's pretty close to Kinnan, nothing else ever. I just do love that deck. Before I had Kinnan together, I built Brea. That was my first kind of real CDH deck.
Oh, okay.
Before it got banned, I played Golos a little bit. But that
Okay.
was really more of a casual deck that I tried to push into CDH territory because my playgroup friends Cam and Dylan were like, listen, you should try the CDH stuff. Come on, come with us to this little tournament in 2019 in Phoenixville. So I did, and I played a crappy Golos deck, and I lost every game, and it was a good time. Um,
Okay. Golos.
but
Oh,
yeah,
oh Jesus. Talk about
but at the
mistakes
moment,
and magic.
yeah, really.
Ugh.
I've been playing in a lot of Tim Jessica lately, and I'm liking that a lot.
Me too. I
I
just
was
talked to Max P about that deck, dude. This is one of my favorite decks to
yeah.
play. It's so much fun.
Well, I started with Max P's list because he
Me
was
too.
playing it at Cowtown.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I liked the look of the list, and I had been for a while kind of looking for an excuse to put together a Mardu deck, and mostly because I have um, I fully support proxies to be clear, but
Me
I
too.
have Kinnan all in paper, and I have a ton of the staples in the rest of the colors. The duels, like all that jazz, just kind of sitting in a box doing nothing. I was like, man, I got to get a Mardu deck together and do something with these staples and
Right.
kind of broaden the play styles that I'm comfortable with because I really was uncomfortable with turbo decks of any description
Hmm.
for a long time.
Hmm.
So I've enjoyed taking that on with Tim Najeska.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely for me. I have 10 sleeved up decks, and I agree. Like I love the. Hey, if you like this deck, play this deck because the better you are at the deck. Like I love that you are like that with Kennen. Well, for me, when I had that with my Tevis Crom deck, but I have a couple other decks that I've been playing because also they're popular decks. Like, hey, let me play this Rogsai, let me play this deck, and now I know how to go against it in my other deck too, right? And it is good to broaden your horizons a little bit. But the Timna Jessica deck, I wasn't on the Abdel combo, and then the last podcast I did with Max B, he got me on it, and that's probably my third favorite deck right now to play. It's just like everybody's doing the Ristic Study thing, and everybody's doing this and drawing cards, and Timna Jessica's like, yeah, I'm just gonna Timna board wipe here. Like, card draw
Yeah.
and board wipes are good, guys.
I'm a big fan of the outlet in the command zone.
Hmm.
Part of what I love so much about Kinnan is that I feel like it does a lot of different things in the command zone. It gives you a win outlet, and it doubles your mana. It's a pretty easy commander to cast at 2 mana.
Hmm.
And Tuna Jessica is similar in that it gives you a lot of different kinds of utility from the
Hmm.
command zone, and I think that's really valuable.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. But Timna and a ham sandwich is a good deck, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
For sure. But speaking of Cam and Dylan, I like to touch because I've been a part of that Discord for a couple years now, and it's a great community. You guys probably have the best community around. I'd like to. How'd you meet those guys, and how'd you get into Play to Win? Because I noticed you used to be like the third wheel, but now you're just like a staple. Now you're the dude. Like when they do a podcast, it's like their personality's awesome, and then I'm like, oh, okay, Tyler's talking. Everybody be quiet. I'm gonna learn something from Tyler. Like you're that sensei. Like, hey guys, this is not how this works. This, and they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Ooh, goofy. Like those guys are hilarious together. But you're kind of like the brains behind everything. Me personally, that's how I think. So how do you?
They're pretty sure too.
No, they
they
are.
decided better.
No, I agree. They're dope, but you're just like, guys, why are you giving things 9.732s on this stupid scale? And it's just like, you're the dad. Like, come on, dad, we can't have anything fun.
Pretty much.
You're like, come on, guys.
So yeah, we're all from the same area, in Bethlehem, PA, which is like I said, like an hour 10 north of Philly, about an hour 10 south of New York City, and we're kind of in different stores at different times. There's a lot of local stores around there, but I think we had all kind of maybe run into each other here or there. But an ex of mine who I'd dated for a long time had used to play Pokemon cards with Dylan way back.
Cool.
And eventually we did a little bit of playing Magic, and Dylan kind of became part of our casual play group for Casual Commander. And then one thing led to another. Eventually, after a while, Dylan was looking for a place to live, and he ended up moving into my place. So he was my roommate for quite a while, and was when we started Play to Win. Yeah, Cam and Dill were the ones who said we really want to push into CDH, and decided to start a business and do the YouTube channel. I don't think I would have had any of that in me. And besides that, I didn't think I wanted to play CDH. Once I did, and once I really gave it a solid try, I love it. And now I have a hard time enjoying casual as much. But I was definitely dragging my feet. They wanted to play CDH, and I was like, why can't we just stick to our casual pods? But I'm glad they pushed for it.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm the same way. I was all about casual. You can't tell me nothing. I'm not trying to combo, yada, yada, yada. And then I played it one time, and I was hooked. And now I have one casual Ur-Dragon deck that I don't even touch. Like, it doesn't. I don't want to play that a little bit, right? I'm all in, and me and my friend group, we just started grinding. Now we're gonna be tournament grinders. I'm going to SCG Con this weekend. In November, we're going to the biggest tournament in CCS, which is awesome. So now,
nice,
because I think really is not just CDH made their own format, but I think there's casual CDH like on Spell Table, at the kitchen table, and then there's tournament EDH, and that's where you'll see more blue blasts, and you'll see tighter things in the list that people aren't like playing around. And that's what we're getting into, is actually the tournament side of it.
Yeah, it does seem like those are diverging a little more, for sure.
And like, you got to think, when y'all started Play to Win, or 2-3 years ago, the tournament scene isn't what like it is now. It was quarterly. Oh, cool! This 120 person event every 3, 4, 5 months. That's awesome. And then people would travel, and that was that. Now it's every weekend. I think this weekend there's like 5 within a 200-mile radius with at least 50 people in it, like where I live. That's crazy to me, especially where you live, Philly, New York, Ohio's areas. That's like where CDH is, right? Boston.
Yeah, it is taking off.
Yeah, and I was talking to Hire about that, and he was joking. He does the fish boil in San Diego, and he's doing a 300-person tournament. He's like, hey, somebody talked to me. They want to do a 50K. And I'm like, hey, man, $100 a pop, almost 1,000 people. That's 100K. So, but minus, the warehouse and everything, that could be a 50K in 5 years. And like, we're talking about it, that's the future. Like, it's not going down anytime soon. Right? Like, unless they ban Rhystic, Mystic, and Dockside all at once, I don't think CDH players are going to go anywhere. You have people doing this for a living now. Like, that's unheard of. And it's not even a format. Like, that's unheard of. Isn't that crazy? Like, I love that. Like, that's why I made this podcast, is to get the more EDH players into CDH and just make it grow even bigger. And, you guys, I have to... For everybody that ever listens to anything about Play to Win, you guys are the front runners of, hey, you can be goofy, you can have a big friend group, but we're here to play to win. Like, yeah, we joke and we'll misplay, but we're here to win the game. Because that's the biggest thing when I got into CDH. I'm like, no, it's sweaty modern players and nobody has fun, and it's just everyone's trying to win turn 2. That's not it at all. If you're not laughing at the table, there's a problem. Right? Like, I'm going to make a joke as soon as I get to the table.
a lot of people from the outside think that if competitive is in the name of the format, it must be really sweaty and unpleasant and too try hard and all this stuff. But in part because the game demands that you kind of leverage a certain amount of social capital to win, to interact well with the table, to get your opponents to evaluate things or listen to your evaluation of the state of the board and stuff.
Hmm.
I feel like players who are might do really well in 1v1 by being very standoffish and very try hard and even maybe kind of cold or rude or something like that just doesn't fly. Like, it doesn't work to your advantage in CDH, even if you wanted to be that way. And I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. What I like about it too, it's CDH can be like your play style. Hey, if you don't like politics, you can sit back and be quiet, and you can play a deck that does that, right? Like Rockside doesn't have the politic. Like
Yeah.
just trying to win, right? But like if you're like more laid back, like you're playing Kinnan. Kinnan wants to play the long game, right? Or if you're like in Blue Farm or somebody else that, hey, like I probably have to be political, a Tim Najeska list that's like, hey, I need to talk so I just don't lose. So I agree. And what I like too, if you have a lot of charisma, or if you think you're funny, or if you're this, like, CDH can help you with that. And, if you don't have a lot of friends, and I was scared to go on Spell Table because it was just me, like the guys I played with don't really play Spell Table and we couldn't play as much. So I get on Spell Table and I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? Like, and oh, what's going on, man? How you doing? And it's like, they're very welcoming. And then I wanted to play. Right now I have a new friend group just from random Spell Table games. And now there's discords where it's like, hey, you don't have to do the random spell games by yourself. You can get a group of people, and it's so much. It's the opposite of what I thought, right? Especially getting
Yeah.
into this podcast thing, I was scared to death to reach out to you and to Max P and to Wounded. And when I tell you 95% of people have said yes, it blew my mind. They're like, yeah, why not? Cool. I'll talk about Kinnan. Cool. I'll do this. And I'm like, dude, I have 10 followers. Yeah, man, it's cool. Like the
Yeah.
community is awesome. And I would love if any like new guy trying to get into CDH is listening to this, dude, it's not as scary as you think. Yeah, we're trying to win the game, but overall, this format is healthy and has a lot of good players just trying to push this, make it an actual format one day. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
And I
I don't
think
know if I want Wizards to to make it a format. I'm not sure yet.
yeah, that's the problem, right? Is once Wizard starts designing for it, then it's going to become their vision of the format instead of the player's vision of the format.
Right. And I don't know if we want a blue spirit guide. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, if they ever realize that CDH can sell packs and not just secret layers, then we're going to be in trouble.
Oh yeah. Once it's like, ooh, blue spirit guide, black spirit guide, ooh, a 1 mana rock tap for 8 black, but you have to sacrifice a creature. Awesome.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
don't do
Blue
that.
Spirit Guide is a great example because like everyone just intuitively knows that Blue Spirit Guide cannot be printed. Like, it would be so bad for for
Dude.
every format is legal in.
Exactly. I'm with the white spirit guide. Like, all right, I'll give white mana. That's dope. I wouldn't give green. Green doesn't need it, right? Black definitely doesn't need it. You have all the
Green
rituals.
already has one. There's an Elvish Spirit Guide.
Oh, there's Elvish spirit
They
guide. My
don't need
bad.
it, but
Yeah, there's Elvish and
yeah,
Simic. Yeah, my bad. I don't know what I'm
yeah,
thinking. That's one of my favorite magic cards. I meant black. Black doesn't need it. White would probably need it.
yeah,
And then blue, it's like, guys, you already have all the free things. That's why I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm like, I don't understand why they're still printing stuff for blue. Like, I try not to be negative on the podcast, but I would hopefully I get to talk to Matt Tabak in a couple weeks, and I want to talk to him. He's the guy that does like the rules, and he's pretty big up in Wizards. Guys, what are we thinking with the power of blue and red? Like blue and red just keeps going higher and higher and higher, like the flares, right? In MH3.
yeah,
You have
yeah,
a free counter spell. You have a free fork. You have a free thought seize. You have a free like Angel's Grace or everything gets hexproof. And then you have a free cultivate. It's
yeah.
like, guys, come on. Green's like, give me free removal or something, dude. We have force of vigor. That's it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, with like how they get locked into color identity like that, I feel like this problem has existed since the very beginning. If you think of the cycle of cards that includes Ancestral Recall and Lightning Bolt, and what are we gonna do with 3 for white? We'll gain 3 life. Sure. So they get so locked into the color identity and this like kind of like symmetry of equivalent effects.
Mhm.
And I just don't think that they're usually actually balancing the power of those effects very well. So,
Mm-hmm.
if green is going to get a cultivate as their flare, then, I don't think we should be talking cultivate. I think we should be talking like 3 lands to the battlefield. You know what I mean? Like ramp that up. There is a lever there.
Mm-hmm.
They just choose to make those effects less powerful, and part of that is because you know how good a free counterspell that requires you to sacrifice a creature is in Commander, like casual Commander, is really different from how good it is in CDH, right?
Mm-hmm.
Green ramp in casual is much better than green ramp is in CDH because you can
Mm-hmm.
expect the game to go longer and it builds inevitability, a lot more quickly.
Right. Well, and the other thing, a lot of CDH players, talking about the bans and all the controversies, we're just looking in a vacuum. We're just looking at CDH. Like 60 card, green is insane. Like Nykthos and Pioneer, like green has always been really good. So I think they look at it overall. They just don't go, oh yeah, Commander CDH, green's not that good. They don't look at that. They look at Commander and then they look at everything else. If they would give something that says 2 green mana, put 3 lands in the battlefield, like Modern and Pioneer and Standard are like, what? Oh my god, what are you talking about? They're playing prime times and stuff like that, like we don't have. So I understand.
Yeah,
I understand, and I do think for overall they're doing a good job, especially with new cards like Agatha Soul Cauldron. I think that is a perfect design. Flubs, that's an amazing design. Like design wise, they're
yeah,
doing good. They are shit in the bed sometimes, but I'm with Wizards. Is hey, that's not easy. I can you imagine working for them and every single day trying to think of a new card that's viable. That's not just 4 mana. I draw my whole deck, right? Like, hey guys, like we're making another powerful card. What do you like Nadu? Do you see the original printing of Nadu?
no,
It was like so the when they banned it for modern, the guy I don't remember the guy who did the Modern Horizons 3 set, he showed the card and it was like Nadu has you make casting Zilid flash, Nadu has flash, and whenever opponent targets one of your spells, you can do the Nadu thing, flip, yada yada yada. So the commander guys were like, hey, that's too broken for commander, y'all need to switch it. And they said okay, so then they switched it to what it is now, and now it's the best modern deck ever to exist.
yeah,
All right,
and
guys,
arguably the best CDH deck. It's very good.
it's definitely the best CDH like the start ever. Like it's the only deck
Yeah,
besides Kinnan in the last 3 years that can compete numbers wise with Blue Farm. Like it was Blue Farm, everybody else, and then Kinnan's coming, and then they print Orchard Master, so Kinnan's down a little bit, and then Sisei's coming, and it wasn't really doing, and then Nadu statistically is doing almost as good as Blue Farm, and that's what I like to hear. But we're gonna get into
yeah,
Nadu a little later, kind of comparisons of Nadu and Kinnan for sure. But
sure.
I wanted to get into before we get into the deck tech, I want to get into like the play style of Kinnan and maybe like we're talking a little bit about off air where Kinnan's a good late game deck. I'm not saying people are playing this deck wrong, but I definitely think it has a lower floor but a really 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 high ceiling. So is there anything you can give to people, because in my experience when a new player gets into CDH they play Kinnan, we get them to Kinnan, right? That's like a really good, hey, I love big dumb things in casual, I'm gonna play this CDH. So is there anything you can tell or like try to help the newer player playing Kinnan and maybe the play patterns of him?
Yeah, so I would start by saying I think a lot of people do point to Kinnan as a very good first deck, and at first blush I understand why, because it has some similarities with casual. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
jam huge guys. There are relatively straightforward to understand infinite mana combos,
Yeah.
and I think you inherently know what to do with most cards. There's not like
Mm-hmm.
so many A plus Bs throughout the deck that you might play something that you really want to wait until you have the other half of an A plus B.
Mm-hmm.
But um, to me, like what's really difficult about piloting Kinnan, and I think part of the reason it has such a low floor, is that it is capable of presenting a near turbo game, a strong mid range game, and a reasonable Staxy game, a very long game. And depending on your pod, and what hand you keep, it really will change how well the deck is capable of performing in that game.
Mm.
And being able to identify, those things correctly and what kind of hand you need and what you should be trying to do in a given game takes a lot of knowledge of the meta and a lot of existing knowledge of how CDH games shake out and what the other decks at your table do. So
Mm.
I think in that sense, it's actually a really bad deck to put in front of a beginner because there's all these decisions they don't even know they should be making. They're just trying to keep a 7 that looks like it does something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're horny on, mana rocks. Oh my god, this is a
Yeah.
fucking mana crypt and a chrome mox and a mox opal, and I get Kinnan out turn one. It's like, yeah, but you're going last, and there's a Mystic Remora and a Ristic Study, and then what are you doing with the Kinnan turn one? Right? Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think turn one Kinnan, turn two activate is the game plan every single time. I think you definitely look at it, right? But well, I mean, you can say I'm wrong or not. I don't really know. I'm not the best Kinnan pilot in the world. I don't have the deck sleeved up, but I do have a Rog Thrasios teamer deck. And it's my own brew. I'm about 20 cards off of the regular list that everyone's playing. They're doing like the untapped basic land thing. So
Hmm.
the name of the deck is called Red Kinnan because I love spinning into a fucking Atali. It's just the cope, the dopamine I get when I spin into an Atali.
Yeah, that's
But
got to feel incredible. Spin into an Atali or a
oh yeah,
Dockside or something.
or Dockside, or I have Nyx Blue Ancient. I have a Sneak Attack is like the namesake of the deck, and I think that card's insane. So I'm on Tidespout, Hullbreaker. I'm on all the big stuff. But anyways, that's just my little dopamine. But back on track. So when we're talking to new players, like you said, hey, I don't think this is a deck for a new player, and I couldn't agree with you more. What are you looking for into mulligans, and what is the game plan? Is it just, hey, whatever my opponents are doing, or kind of what your cards look like in your mulligans? Like, what are you looking for? It can't be a turn one kin in every play, is it?
No, I mean that's one of the things that will make me keep a hand. That's a 7 or a 6, even if it doesn't necessarily have another strong game plan. But the less dread at the magistrates I see, the less important that becomes to me. A German cannon is really good, but if you don't have enough mana to eventually get to activations, or you don't have a good creature tutor or something like that, then that really might go nowhere.
Mm.
So if I'm against Rog side decks or other turbo decks, I usually want a hand that has at least a piece of interaction because I know I'm not going to be able to just ignore it and hope that I can outrace them because the deck almost never can.
Right,
Um,
right.
and, and yeah, and a lot of times you're looking for one of the good card draw engines too, because that's one thing that unlike 10 decks or something, Kinnan does not inherently just draw you a bunch of cards,
Mm.
and it is a card hungry deck because some of your draws are just dead draws. You don't really want to draw Void Winnower most of the time unless you have a ton of mana rocks already deployed.
Hmm.
So evaluating how to keep a hand, it starts with a turn one Kinnan, but it depends a lot on what else there is. Really, I want to be looking ahead to turn three and saying, okay, by turn three, am I going to be able to, be activating Kinnan at least once per turn cycle, or tutoring my Seedborn, or am I going to be able to present, a Hullbreaker combo? Do I have a path to infinite mana? All that stuff. I'm
Hmm.
always aiming at what can I be doing by turn three when the game is kind of in its mid-game phase, with how fast we go in CDH nowadays.
Right, right. And coming from a guy, you are, I've talked to Higher, Wounded, I've talked to a couple people, you are the reason that got Kinnan off the map. Everyone's like, oh my God, Tyler's deck tech. Kinnan's amazing, right? You are the reason why Kinnan's smacking. So with you being that reason, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I love Kinnan personally. But with that being the reason, are you do you think you have conquered Kennen? Do you think he has still room to grow? Do you think he's just finished? Because you've probably played at least 1,000 games with Kennen. Do you think he's solved that? That's kind of my question.
No, I wouldn't say the deck is solved. I think, yeah, no, I end up checking in on other Kinnan lists pretty often, and
Okay.
sometimes I'll pick up tech that I think is good, and sometimes I disagree with other players who are trying stuff in Kinnan, but there really is some stuff that varies by pilot. A lot of people run Trinisphere in Kinnan as an example, and I don't like Trinisphere, and I don't think it works well with how I play the deck, but I think for some people it really does. They
Oh.
lean into the stacks part a little more. And so I just think for some people it's right and for some people it's not. Um, And
Mm.
I think a lot of lists maybe are like this. We kind of reach the conclusion that some decks are just as optimized as they can be because people have worked on them from every angle. But there's a certain amount of like tuning to you as a pilot that I think more decks could afford to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just compared to other CDH decks, I think Kinnan has kind of more things that feel like flex slots. So it feels less solved because people's lists just vary quite a bit more
Mm-hmm.
than most CDH lists.
Okay, yeah, I thought the slots were kind of tight.
I mean, there's a ton that you really just can't cut, but that's any CDH deck. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I routinely have maybe three, sometimes even four slots that I'm playing around with, trying new things, running funky cards, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's a lot for most CDH decks to feel comfortable playing around with.
Yeah, that's the funny part. Like if I compare your list, comedian's list, and wounded's list, those are the pilots that you three have done the best with, Kinnan. Your lists are probably all 15 to 20 cards different from each other. And also, your list is probably the spicier one of the other ones. Like, you're on the clones and you're not on Trinisphere. And I just talked to Wounded about Trinisphere, and he was like, this is the best include I've ever had. Like, Trinisphere is crazy. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It kind of stops all your combos. And he's like, doesn't even matter, bro. Trinisphere is the best card ever. And then the original Kinnan pilot's telling me, hey, I don't play that dog shit ass Trinisphere card. And that's the
Oh,
difference.
no
Like I love
inflection.
that. I absolutely love that. Y'all have 80 cards together, but the last 20 cards, like you're an altered ego. You're on a couple other. You're on the new Polywog. But
Yeah.
we'll get into the individuals later for sure. I haven't even read Kinnan, and I'm trying to base this podcast on newer players getting into it for sure right now. So let's talk about Kinnan. So Kinnan Bonner Prodigy, he's green and a blue. Legendary. If you guys lived under a rock, because he's the second most popular deck to bring to tournaments. Legendary creature,
Yeah.
human druid, 2/2. Whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced, and that activate ability of 5 green blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature from among them in the battlefield. Put the rest in the bottom of library in your order. So can you, since I just had to read that, can you kind of explain the nuances and like the sneaky kind of things you can do with Kinnan? Like I know with Jewel Lotus, even if you have Kinnan out and a Jewel Lotus, you can crack that. It's like a Lotus Petal. I feel like a lot of people don't know that. Is there anything like that you can maybe give some tidbits to the newer players?
Yeah, that's a great example. So in any case where you're adding additional mana, like as a result of a replacement effect like this with Kinnan,
Mm-hmm.
um, any restrictions that applied to the original mana don't apply to the additional mana that's created. So Jeweled Lotus is a great one. Most Kinnan decks don't run Jeweled Lotus. I have briefly, and then I took it back out. But I've considered adding it back in because the format is getting faster. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason is that Jeweled Lotus, if you have Kinnan out at its floor, is still a Lotus Petal in Kinnan because you'll still get 1 mana that you can spend on non-commanders
Mm-hmm.
for a 0 mana artifact. Other things that are like that, Delighted Halfling, you can produce the colored mana to cast a legendary creature, but the Kinnan mana that gets generated from the Delighted Halfling can also be used on anything. So that's an important one. Another
Okay.
thing that's unintuitive, I think, to newer players is Relic of Legends. You would think that when you're tapping a creature for Relic of Legends ability to add a mana that would also double, but it doesn't. That only adds one. So that one's kind of a bummer. The
Really? Why
the
is
card is
that?
almost good enough. It's because even though the cost is tapping an untapped legendary creature you control, um, for the purposes of like what the actual activation cost is, you're not tapping a non-land permanent because it doesn't include the tap symbol in the cost. It's just instructing you to
Mm,
tap, if that makes sense. This is sort of the same way
okay.
Springleaf Drum works. If
I
Springleaf Drum
okay.
didn't also tap itself, it wouldn't produce 2 mana in Kinnan either.
If Springleaf Drum said target creature has tap yada 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 yada, but Springleaf Drum has to tap it to tap that creature. I got you. I didn't know that
Mhm.
because I do have a Rock Thrasios deck like I talked about, and Relic of Legends is one of the best rocks. So now I know with Kinnan I can't do the double mana thing.
Yep.
And also, side
The
note, when you tap a mana, right, for Mox Opal for green, it has to produce another green. You can't do a signet. You can't do green, blue, blue, green. So that's another
Yep.
common misconception people have.
Yeah, another mana of the type that it did produce.
Mm-hmm.
So this comes up with Bloom Tender too. People will be like, oh well, can you just make whatever you want? And it's like, well, no, you can either make if you're in Simic and you have a Bloom Tender out with Kinnan, you can make green green blue or blue blue green, but you can't make three of one. Um,
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying.
mhm.
So, like, Bloom Tender in a 5 color deck, say you have a 5 color commander or whatever, and you tap it for Wooburg. If Cannon's out, it's Wooburg, and then, like, any other color, Wooburg and blue, Wooburg and black, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Is that how
whichever
it
you
works?
want. Yeah, because it produced all five, so you can have it add an additional of any of those
Just
five that
one
it produced.
additional. Yeah, yeah. Because that
One
card is kind
additional.
of,
Yep.
for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So it is a little confusing with Kennan.
Hmm.
So all right, that's cool. I'm glad we scratched that, but I'm sure everybody listening to this knows what Kennen does. I think
Probably.
Kennen, besides Dockside, I think Kennen is one of the creatures in the 99, one of the best creatures in the 99 you can. Like every deck, like a Thras Vial list or my teamer list, Kennen just puts you over that hump. Hey, that Soul Ring now taps for 3. Hey, you accidentally, have a Grim Monolith tapping for 4. Like, dude, that's insane. I can activate Grim Monolith a million times. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, can we talk a little before I get into deck tech? Can we talk a little about Kennen in the 99? Like, I don't think you have any decks that you play with him in the 99. And what do you think he brings to the table? Even though you're not activating it, just his triggered ability alone, should be enough to be in the 99, right?
Um, I his triggered I think it's a replacement effect, not a triggered ability.
Oh, you're right.
But
I'm
even
sorry.
so, if we mean the mana ability, yeah, I think for a lot of decks, that makes it into the 99. And part of the reason is it's part of an A plus B with Basalt. So for commanders that have an outlet for infinite colorless mana, an
Mm-hmm.
A plus B that makes infinite colorless mana for a total cost of 5 mana is pretty appealing.
Like a Thrasios deck.
The other, yeah,
Yeah, he
Thrasios
goes in
decks,
every
yeah,
Thrasios deck.
I think so.
Not just
The other
Thrasios. You need a
reason,
partner, guys. Don't listen to Tyler. I
yeah, don't
love
do
your.
that.
I'm sticking to the man. I don't need a partner. Fuck you guys. I love your statement. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't realize
No,
how
okay.
funny you were. I'm playing Thrasios and Timna. Fuck the world.
The other part of what makes Kinnan appealing in the 99 for a lot of decks is that CDH in general runs a lot of artifact ramp, because it's fast, because they don't have summoning sickness like creature ramp does. Um, but the more artifact ramp and even creature ramp you have early in the game, when you eventually slam a Kinnan later in the game, that 2 mana creature probably represents a net gain of, maybe 3 or 4 mana. So just the same way that it's really appealing to run a mana vault because you pay 1 for it and it generates 3 mana.
Mhm. Yeah, Mana
It just
Vault.
ramps you very quickly. A later game can do the same thing if you're just deploying rocks normally like you would. So it plays with an existing play pattern that you already want to be executing in most CEDH decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I want to talk a little bit about so Kennan. I think we did it off air, but Kennan, I think he's a really good stacks deck if he needs to be. Like he runs the Void Winnowers, and some decks run the Trinispheres and stuff like that. But like I think he thrives in the mid to late game, like you said before. But also, I lost 2 nights ago to a turn 2, almost turn 1, but they didn't have the outlet, and then turn 2 Kennen. Like that's insane. So can we talk about when you said, "Hey, I think Kennen's really good mid to late game." What's your idea when you go into a pod? Like say, like what's your worst and best matchups? Are you just every game look? You're not trying to activate him as fast as you can, but like you said earlier, you're trying to activate him turn 3. Is that the game plan of just trying to get one of those crate like a Water Archaic, a Void Winter, or a Nezahal, a Nyx Bloom Ancient, something that just like puts you over the hump? So is that you'd rather go later game instead of trying to jam a win on turn 3?
Sometimes you need to just jam a win turn 3. A lot of times I would say this comes up if you know you're going to get outpaced by a crazy amount of card draw with Mystic and Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study stuff hitting the battlefield, and now Polywog Prodigy. You're eventually gonna lose to those decks. But Kinnan, in most cases, does have a ton of inevitability, just because his ability will eventually hit, big game-breaking creatures like Nezahal, which draws you a million cards, or Seedborn, which lets you activate every turn. All the
Mhm.
things you're mentioning, and also those big stacks creatures. One an Archaic, Perplexing Chimera, Void Winnower being the one that everyone is most scared of.
Oh, I didn't even
Um,
say
so
Chimera. Ugh. I hate you for
um,
that. Respectfully, I hate you for that. Respectfully. You're like, I know.
but yeah, so often in Kinnan, I think you can feel pretty confident about your late game plan being good enough to beat most other decks' late game plan. So you want the game to go long. And the other thing that's kind of nice about that is a lot of times it is easy to convince your opponents to make plays that will also make the game go long. Because, if they're not the ones, trying to win right now, they want the game to go longer than it is at the moment. So
Mhm.
Kinnan often puts you in you know, a situation where you can politic very effectively,
Mhm.
because if the game goes long, that's good for you. And so you openly talk about interacting with opponents who are trying to win, trying to push, as they say now,
Mhm.
to try and shut that down and keep the game going.
Yeah, and I feel like he pivots amazingly because it's like, oh yeah, cash your Dranith. I don't care. I already have my cannon. I'm doing my own thing. Until it's like, oh shit. All right, guys. I know I wasn't the threat, but I just activated and I got a Seaborn Muse. All right, guys. We
Yep.
have to murder Kinnan. We have to murder Seaborn Muse. We can't let him untap with it. And it's like at that point, if you untap with Seaborn Muse 3 times, and also we're not going to talk about Seaborn Muse in One Ring. Oh, that's a win con in itself. It's funny when One Ring got printed, I was like, oh, that card seems fine. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I guess that it's 4 mana. I guess that is a good card, maybe in a Kinnan deck. Kinnan's going to thrive. I love that he got another card. I didn't realize the One Ring goes in every deck.
Yeah,
But I
it
was
is
just
just that
terrified of it.
good.
Oh my God, Seabar Muse in One Ring. And you have Monamo in the list?
Yeah.
Oh God, I can't imagine. Cast One Ring, draw a card. Monamo, draw 2 cards, pass. Draw 3 cards, Monamo, draw 4 cards, pass. Draw 5 cards, Monamo. Oh, you win. I don't care. I don't care anymore. It's almost as good as Consecrated Sphinx. So let's
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Let's talk about kind of before we like dive in like straight the deck tech. I want to talk about when you first sleeve this deck up. Like, what made you like, hey, I really think this is a viable CDH deck. Oh my god, this is so much fun. And what made you like pick those certain creatures? Because the list used to be on like Thorn Mammoth and all the crazy dinosaurs, but now you really got down to like Nezahal, Nyxbloom, Void Winnower, Hullbreaker, Tidespout. Those, well, you're not on Tidespout, but those are mainly like the big guys. So in the beginning of Kinnan, what, 3, 4 years ago now? Like, what was the thought process behind that Consecrated Sphinx, right? And how'd you like get, okay, these are the creatures to do it? Because everybody loves throwing a Terracodon around.
Yeah. Um, Early on, I built Kinnan as soon as it was spoiled. I just knew I was really interested in that deck. I love mana ramp. Simic are my favorite colors, so I was pretty keen on it right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, my deck looked really different, and part
Okay.
of that was I wasn't leaning as hard into big creatures. I think it's actually Hire who kind of really popularized, as he called it, the big flips version of Kinnan,
Really?
with a lot more big creatures. Yeah, I
I
had
just
a
talked
couple
to
big
him.
hits.
He said it was because of you. He's like, I built it
Oh,
because of
really?
Tyler. Yeah, I just talked to him
I
about it.
guess maybe we were doing it around the same time,
Yeah,
but
that's so cool. That's so cool because y'all's episodes will come out, I think, within a week of each other. So that's dope.
oh, nice.
Hmm.
So I'm pulling up an early version of the Kinnan list that I haven't touched in 4 years,
Okay, I would love to
just
see
to
this.
remind myself.
Send it to
Here,
me,
I'll send it to you on
please.
Discord.
Yes, I want to see
Yeah,
this. I'm gonna compare it to your list now, and you're like, "Eh." And then after this, like I said, you probably have the Dork Lord. You probably have the spicier Kinnan list with all your clones. So after we talk about the beginnings of Kinnan, I want to talk about your spicier includes
yeah. So
Maraleaf
in the beginning,
Pixie,
I
Truth
ran a
Professor,
lot of 2 mana mana dorks
Quarian
that produced
Elves,
both colors of mana.
Rex
Yeah.
Sage, Ruick Armasaur. I love this.
So you can see early on, the only
Tides,
big creatures that was really on were
Sphinx.
Seaborn Muse and Conch Sphinx.
Yeah, that was it.
Um, it was it was much more about getting to
Mana.
infinite activations. That was, yeah, that was kind of um, where I was trying to get, but I was not initially running anything except Basalt. I wasn't running the Mirage Mirror outlet for Basalt. Treasure
Mm.
Vault hadn't been printed yet.
Is this the
So
first
this was a
list?
much slower version of the list.
Mm.
Yeah, it might be a few cards off from the very first list that I played for the channel, but it's pretty close. This is more or less where I left it
This
back
is
at
some
that time.
spicy tech, though, dude. Stroke of genius.
Yep. But what you'll see, I was
Freed
mostly
from the
leaning
real.
into Freed from the Real and Pemin's Aura.
Mm.
Those both with any mana dork that can produce both green and blue, those both represent infinite mana of both of your colors. And so I was leaning more on that than on Basalt Monolith plus an outlet. And
Mm.
there's something to be said for it. It is kind of a more direct A plus B because you don't need the outlet to then hit infinite Kinnan activations, but it's
Mm.
also much more telegraphed. There's much more space for your opponents to interact with that creature to stop the aura from hitting it. It's just easier to shut down. So I did
Mm.
eventually move from that version of the list to a much tighter list with mostly just one mana dorks and a lot of the big
Mm.
creatures that we see now.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I would love to put this list in the show notes as well, the updated list, because it kind of gives you an idea. There's a lot to be said. Like, you have Midnight Clock, like that's where you were at. You're like, hey, Midnight
Yeah,
Clock, Jataxian Probe, Ponder, Preordain, you Time Twister. You try to make up for not having card draw on the command zone, but later you realize, like, hey, I don't need to run those shit ass cards. I just need to, do other things. And you're probably on every mana dork ever. Sylvan character, Incubation Druid, right? You're even on Rex Sage, which is awesome. Spectral Sailor.
yeah,
Like, this is not even the same deck, but I love, like, this is the Carpet of Flowers. This is the beginning. This is what made it. You're on 10 artifacts. Like, this is
yeah.
insane. This is not even the same deck at all, but it's just what it evolved into today. But a lot of that is probably, you didn't know, right? I'm sure you didn't build the deck and like, you know what, this is going to be the best Simic commander ever. Like, you had.
Honestly, I think our very first gameplay video with Kinnan, it was like, I think we filmed it a week after it was spoiled. And I was already feeling pretty strong about it then. I don't know if
Really?
this is the game that they eventually posted, but when we filmed for that gameplay video, I know at least one of the games was a turn with Kinnan with like counter backup,
Mm.
immediate infinite mana, and I was like, this is a real deck.
Oh, what
For
turn?
every set we do,
Sorry,
I
you
think
cut out.
I'm pretty sure it was turn two. I
Mm.
think turn two.
Okay.
It
That's
could have been that it was turn three, and I'm misremembering. But
Yeah, you want to guess how many cards difference are from that list and your list now? Just a number, just guess.
mm, I'm sure it's a lot. I'm going to say probably like 40.
47. Holy shit. Talk
Yeah,
about humble beginnings.
yeah,
It's not even the same deck at all. That's amazing. Oh, but I like you said, hey, I took out the crap. I took out the stuff I didn't need. I took out most of the bad cards, and you added, the big titans and the Kinnan staples now today that you weren't on, but you were still like, you were on Bloom Tender, you were on the Dorks, you were on Gilded Drake, Consecrated Sphinx. Those never came out. Thrasios, like those are staples of Kinnan, right?
yeah.
I love looking at this deck. This is so cool. So all right, well let's get into Kinnan a little bit. So I'm gonna talk about, like I said earlier, I'm gonna talk about the clones. I don't think anybody is on Altered Ego. I think a couple people are
No,
on Clever Impersonator. Everybody's on Phyrexia Metamorph, right? And then you're not on Tidespout. Like, is that like your current meta, or is that just maybe your play style? Because I personally love the clone version. I had a guy at Command Fest Orlando last year. He's like, hey guys, I have this Kinna deck, but I don't have any combos like Basalt combos. It's all about clones. And he had every clone, and that deck smacked us with 5 Nyx Bloom Ancients.
yeah.
So I'm down with the clone plan, but I'm curious, since you are the original Kinnan pilot, no one can tell me anything. I'm listening to you over anybody else. So why some of those spicier includes?
Well, when it comes to the clones, part of that was a meta call, and that kind of began right around the time that the One Ring came out, we were seeing people keep hands for a One Ring left and right, and so I wanted Clever Impersonator because that can hit the battlefield as a One Ring, which helps a lot. So could Phyrexian Metamorph, of course. Um, and I wanted to be able to clone those, but also at the same time in the meta, we were seeing a lot of Atraxa and a lot of 7 mana Tally, and these are both also really great hits for a clone. But the more I played with, more clones in the deck, the more I realized, there's almost always a great hit available for a clone.
We're not going to talk
And cloning
about.
a Dockside,
Yeah, we're not going to talk
is,
about the 2 red guy that gives you 5 treasures, and that's a win con in Kinnan.
yeah, pretty
10 mana,
close.
thanks. I win.
Yeah. So as I was playing with more of them, I realized, if a Dockside comes down and there's, a lot of Dockside hits on the board, I can respond with an activation before their treasures get made, right? With the Dockside ETB still on the stack.
Okay.
And in Kinnan, if you have a high enough density of clones, the likelihood that you produce enough mana to then spin into another clone and kind of keep it going is pretty high. So
Oh
this
my
can create a situation
god.
where you clone or into one of your like game-winning creatures when your opponent is actively trying to make a dockside play that is likely going to turn into a game-winning play.
Yeah,
So
4 clones. I think
yeah,
you're on 4 or 5 clones.
I think I'm on 5. I want to say, honestly, there are others that I consider running. I think the clones have gotten a little bit worse than they were maybe 6 months ago in the current meta because the current meta is a bunch faster, but they still feel very strong.
I see 4.
And
Maybe there's
um,
something I'm missing.
Flesh Duplicate, Phyrexian Metamorph, Altered
Oh, flesh
Ego, and
duplicate.
Clever Impersonator.
Yep, you got me.
hmm
My bad. My fault.
Yeah, no, all good.
I love that.
Um, and
I love that.
I think also because Volatile Stormdrake has become really popular, and my version of Kinnan is on both of the Drakes, Gilded Drake and
Yep.
Volatile Stormdrake.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Those
Yep. I'm with
those
Gilded
also play
Drake.
real nice.
hmm
hmm
The removal too,
Also
right?
very strong with the clones.
The Storm Drake's a removal.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say Stormdrake is better than Gilded Drake, I think, because of the removal option.
I agree. Just in
Sometimes you want
your
to
deck.
steal the
In your deck, I don't know because
yeah,
what if they steal a Hullbreaker or something? But I'm with you. I'm with you on both for sure.
yeah.
I love this deck, dude. This list is so good. Cause I'm looking at comedians and I'm looking at woundeds and I'm looking at a couple others and I'm just looking at yours and I'm just like, dude, like you just top 4 at a play to win event. I believe it's a couple weeks now, and it's you do that every single time. Do you have time to go to to the bigger maybe top deck events? Like, are you a tournament grinder? Or are you just too busy with your life? Because I really think you would smack the meta if you had the time.
I get to some of them, mostly ones that are closer.
Mm.
And I haven't. I think I let's see. I top 16 an SCG event. I don't think I've top 16 one of the Eminence ones. At least not. Or, I'm sorry, one of the top deck ones.
Yeah, I don't
At
think you
least
have
for
either.
a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't seem to do as well in those. I think the meta at those tends to kind of be a little different, and I couldn't really tell you why. The play to win events are a similar size now that they're routinely around 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it just draws a slightly different crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's definitely something about home turf where it's like a game store that I've been going to for forever, where I feel very at ease.
And everybody
um,
knows you, right? That's a play to win event. Everybody that's joining that event knows who you are. So maybe in a top deck they don't. But I think that you would probably be better in a different setting because they don't know who you are. Like I'm sitting down at the table and I see you and I see Kinnan and I go, oh my God, we're gonna get cooked. So if I didn't know you, I feel like you have an advantage. So it's funny that it's opposite. Hey, can
I
I
don't
have
know.
your
A lot of
autograph?
top
Thank
deck
you for
events.
being for Kinnan. Appreciate it.
At least someone at the table does seem to always know who I am, and sometimes that works against me.
Right.
I don't
That's
know
what I'm saying.
if you've talked to Ian, he might have said this as well, but there's a certain amount of, if you're a known, CDH person, people will kind of overestimate you and assume that you've got a better hand than you do or something, and sometimes it results in
Right.
kind of getting targeted a little more.
Yeah, because the
But
results.
it is what it is.
Like if you look up
Yeah,
Kinnan on EDH Top 16, your name's number 1. And it's
I
like,
guess so.
I'm not going to listen to anything you're saying. You're the number 1 Kinnan pilot. And you're like, come on, man. I'm telling you, I don't have anything. I'm just gonna activate Kinnan, and you're like, there's no way you're gonna win on top of us. Activate Kinnan. You're like, it's a fucking elf. Fuck, help me.
Yeah, sometimes.
That's funny. We're talking about clones. I see you're in copy artifact. I haven't seen that in any other list. Is that for another One Ring?
I think a lot of people got off of it, but yeah, I think it's still good because of One Ring. I think there's a lot of times that just playing a 2 mana, one of the better mana rocks, if one of your opponent gets down, a mana crypt or something like that, it's just filling the slot of another 2 mana mana rock, but with the
Mm.
upside that it can also sometimes be the One Ring, or sometimes be a copy of whatever your opponent's Phyrexian Metamorph cloned. Like there's a few edge cases, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't
I
even
still
think
like that
about
card.
copying a Grim Monolith. I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
I was just thinking One Ring. Yeah, I'm just gonna copy my Mana Vault, my Grim Monolith, and my this and my that, and I'm gonna win with Hullbreaker. And then what I noticed too is your list. Are you more like instead of the big flips, are you more just combo Kennen? Like I see the Moonsilver Key for the Basalts, the Trophy Mages. Is that kind of where the deck is right now? How fast can I get a Basalt out?
I definitely haven't gone all the way to Turbo. I think there are still some versions of the list that run several more artifact tutors to try and go for an early basalt, like reshape and things like that. A lot of lists are on Fabricate as well, and I don't run those, so I'm definitely not on the Turbo plan. But in the last couple months, because the meta has gotten faster, I did try and streamline it a little bit to enable the deck to run a little faster. So that is when I put Trophy Mage back in. It's been in and out over the years in my list. That is also when I cut Tide Spout and decided to go down to just Hullbreaker Horror as part of that combo. I cut Thorn Mammoth as well. That was in for quite a while. And
Mm,
those are cards that a lot of times are going to do better with games that are going long. So, I've been trying to increase the deck's ability to present early wins some of the time, just to try and make it possible to keep up or outpace some of the faster decks right now. You're never gonna outrun Rogsai, but
okay. Right.
Sisseys and that kind of thing.
Right, right. Yeah, I got you. There's two more cards I have to. My friends will kill me if I don't ask you. The one is how's a Polywog doing in the list? My buddy plays it and he said it's kind of mid in Kinnan, but I think it's cracked in Kinnan. But I haven't played it.
It depends so much on whether you're going to be able to evolve it. Twice is ideal. I think you have to really kind of play around it if you have it in an opening hand and make sure that you're sequencing things so that it's going to be able to evolve early. But at its best, I mean, at its best, it's just a 2 mana Nezahal. If you get lucky with how the sequencing is going to shake out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At its worst, on the other hand, it's pretty bad. If it's only 0 mana spells are going to draw you cards, then it's not doing very much. So
Right.
it has a lot of variance for a card like that, which makes it hard to evaluate. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's pretty good in Kinnan. I'm not cutting it anytime soon. Um,
Okay, but it might
I
not
see
be a
most other
staple in
Kinnans.
Kinnan. You don't know yet, right? Is that what you're saying? You're still testing
Yeah, I
it
think it's
out.
too soon to
Yeah,
say.
right. Okay.
Hmm.
I got you. But you're gonna put your time in with it. You're not just taking it
Yeah.
out because when it first got printed, everyone's like, Play to Win's one of the podcasts and we're like, this is a 10. This goes in every single blue deck. Oh my god, this is amazing. And I'm just like, I think it goes in like 3 or 4 decks, maybe. I don't think it goes in every deck. It goes in Kinnan, some blue farm list. I slam it in my Gyruda deck. Oh, I love it there. It's amazing in that deck, right? But I had to ask
For
you about
sure.
that for Kinnan. But no, I'm with you. Like let's get 100 games in with it and really feel it. But yeah, just turn 1 Polywog, turn 2 Kinnan, trigger, turn 3 anything else, and now it's on 3 or 4 and it doesn't matter. Like now thank you for my Nezahal. I love that. And then last card
Yeah.
I want to talk about Chimera, but I kind of went over with Wounded on that. That card's just insane. I think Chimera goes in every single Kinnan deck. I hate that stupid card. But
I love that.
yeah, well, it's kind of awkward with you have Homeward Path and Chimera, right? Well, in Simic, you don't have a lot of the tutors for the Homeward Path, so you either have one or the other. And for me, Chimera by itself is kind of like whatever. But what's his name? Wounded was just like, dude, you don't go home without Chimera and Homeward Path. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
I absolutely agree. I started running Chimera kind of as a joke. We do Patreon play days once a month where
Mm.
we'll get on and play games on the
Yep.
Discord.
I played a couple times.
Um,
Yep.
uh, yeah, Dylan and Cam always do. I'm on sometimes, but
Mhm.
on one of those, I was feeling like trying to do something interesting in Kinnan just for fun, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna make it my goal to resolve an Adnaz in Kinnan because I think it would be funny. So I'm trying to think of ways to do this, like interesting ways to do this, and eventually I was like, oh, wasn't there that creature that lets you steal a spell? So I dug around in my collection and eventually found one, and
Oh,
I
you
went,
had
huh,
one
all
just
right, I'm gonna,
sitting in your collection.
yeah. Yeah, I played a lot of that set, so I had that one. And I said, you know, I'm just gonna try this. I'm just gonna throw it in. And I was already on Homeward Path in the deck. And the first time I got Chimera out, and everyone just went, "Oh my God, I can't cast anything. Like if I cast anything good, you just take it, and then I'm screwed." And I went, "Huh, maybe this is just good in its own right." And then the
Hmm.
first time I got it out with Homeward Path, I was like, "This is ridiculous. This is
This is
so
a win
busted."
con. This is a
Yep.
combo. It's
Yeah.
like,
So I just never
okay,
took it
don't
out.
cast your spells. Sweet. I love when Ristic Study makes him not cast a spell. Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
Don't cast it. Cool. I don't care. I'm gonna spin Kinnan.
Yeah, so I'm proud to say before all that, I think foil perplexing chimeras were like $1.15 or something, and I think last I checked they're like 25 or something ridiculous.
All because of you. Look at you making Magic more money, you piece of shit. That's awesome. One more card, and I wanted to kind of end it on the win conditions. One more card I have to ask you, my buddy Eric was wondering about, is the Agatha Soul Cauldron. I see you're not on it, but a lot of
hmm
pilots like don't go home without that. Can you tell me why you're not on it and what you think about the card overall?
I do think it's a pretty good card overall for sure. I tried it in Kinnan when it first came out. I ran it maybe for like 50 games or so. Had enough experience with it that I felt like it was inconsistent and it required, like a lot of other specific cards, a lot of other things to go just right in Kinnan for it to perform really well. Um,
Okay.
I will say if I was gonna go back onto Devoted Druid and Machine God's Effigy
Mm-hmm.
combo, which is
Mm-hmm.
another infinite mana combo, then I might run it again because Agatha Soul Cauldron with Devoted Druid in the graveyard is obviously pretty good.
Mm.
So there's definitely it's definitely close. But part of the strength of Kinnan to me is that you don't need a ton of win cons. You can leave relatively few slots for that, and that's just not one that I wanted to take up the slots to include in the end.
Okay, yeah, and I noticed a lot of lists are playing like endurance, like walking ballista loops, and you don't have that. So let's segue into the win cons. How do you win with Kinnan? What is the best way? For me, it's infinite mana, Thrasios, pump into a finale. But is there any crazy way to win with Kinnan that no one knows about? Maybe you can help us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give credit to Max Wounded Satellite on this one, because after one tournament where I had a bunch of draws where I knew I could have won the game, but it went to time and I can't win at instant speed, and I said, Max, I think you're on some kind of instant speed line. Explain it to me. What do you got? And he said, not only am I on one, but we just put together a second one, and it is awesome. And he's right.
Okay.
um, in tournaments in particular, I think you really needed an instant speed line, both to be able to go over top of your opponents, and also because if you find yourself in that final turn and it's not your turn, you want to be able to win. So you need to have Emergent Zone going. I think there's one of them in which you could also do Valley Flood Caller, but I'm not on that card yet. I might
Hmm.
try it out.
The card's
But
insane.
here's the basic idea. Yeah. One instant speed line that's a lot more simple is you can just endurance loop yourself using crop rotation to find Cephalid Coliseum and drawing your opponents out by activating Cephalid Coliseum, targeting them. Um,
Okay, okay.
but
And then endurance, bringing it back, and then activating and.
Yep.
Mhm.
But if you can also do it without endurance loops, which is good because if your endurance isn't where you need it, then that makes it harder. This one's a little funkier, but Cephalid Coliseum is still the idea here. You're gonna stack its ability over and over to draw your opponents out, make them draw their entire decks, and then lose as a result. And the other way you can do that is if you have infinite mana already, or you can generate infinite mana. You want to crack your emergence zone, run your infinite mana combo with Hullbreaker Horror or whatever, and then you uh, use crop rotation to find Cephalid Coliseum if you don't already have it out. and then you use Mirage Mirror, and you're going to use Mirage Mirror to become a copy of Cephalid Coliseum, and then activate its ability, and then channel Colossal Sky Turtle to return the to return the Mirage Mirror from your graveyard to your hand using its channel ability for 2 and a green,
Oh my
and
gosh.
then you use Invasion of Ikoria to enter the battlefield and search your graveyard to find the Colossal Sky Turtle and put it back on the battlefield. And then you're going to use your Hullbreaker or Tidespout if you're on it to bounce the Invasion and the Sky Turtle back to your hand and rinse and repeat. Because the Invasion is a permanent that hits the battlefield, it lets you bounce it and reuse it and recycle the Colossal Sky Turtle, which lets you get the Mirage Mirror out of your graveyard and so on and so forth.
Hmm. Holy shit. Yeah, I think Nadu's on a similar line. I think Voodoo was talking about, but they don't have Mirage Mirror.
Yeah, I think I
What?
think they do run a Cephalid Coliseum line, but
Hmm.
it might have to be with endurance. I'm not 100% positive.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just so that way you just milling out all your opponents. Is that what you're doing?
Yep.
Or
Well, not
no,
even mill
you're
you.
making
You
them
make them
draw.
draw their whole deck. But
Oh, okay, okay. So how do you win with if they have protection?
if they have protection from everything, like from the one ring or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
I think in that case you don't.
I think
I
maybe you can
think
do it. If you're doing instant speed, you can do it on their upkeep, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, you'd be
let me
able to
draw these
present the
two
same
guys
loop on their
out and
upkeep.
then present the same thing on an upkeep.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite win line, it makes everybody scoop in Kinnan, where it's like, okay, infinite mana, Thrasios, draw my whole deck, infinite actual colored mana, cast all my creatures. Oh, okay, that doesn't work. Finale doesn't work. Okay, all right, I'll pivot. I'll get a Tide Spout. I'll clone Tide Spout, do the loop, bounce everything, cast like a Seagate. Now I have my whole hand, my whole deck in my hand almost, and then pass. And then I have all my counter spells. Anything you do, I'm gonna bounce your lands, right? Because Tide Spout, you can bounce permanents. But in your
Yep.
case, you're not on Tide Spout. But that's my favorite way to win. And they're like, "We're good, we're good, we're good. You bounce on my lands." I'm like, "We're good, we're okay." That's my favorite win line. But in tournaments, that's a little eh. So you,
Yeah.
that was the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was you are on Hullbreaker. Obviously, it's better than Tidespout, but I think every list is on Hullbreaker and Tidespout. Why aren't you on Tidespout again? I don't remember what you said earlier.
I was just looking for slots to try and make the deck lower to the ground and go a little faster, because
Okay.
of where the meta's at right now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it feels redundant. More than with Hullbreaker, I found there are times that you hit Tidespout off of an activation, and you immediately become arch enemy because your opponents assume you're about to win. But if you don't have the 2 mana positive rocks you need, it's not even necessarily a win.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, you know what, maybe I want to cut one of these two. I can still execute all the same lines by
Mm.
getting one of the clones down with Hullbreaker if I need to do the instant speed line.
Okay.
So there's not a functional reason that Tidespout has to be in the deck in order to preserve the win lines. And
Okay.
of the two, Hullbreaker Horror has flash, can't be countered, is 1 mana less, and also can bounce your opponent's spells, which is
Spells.
kind of the best part. So it is
Okay.
just substantially better than Tidespout.
Yeah, so historically, like the big flip Kinnan, it was just all the big dumb creatures. But like lately, Kinnan in your list is like, hey, I'm only playing 5 or 6 of the big boys, but those guys are monumental. One Archaic, Hullbreaker, Chimera, Void Winnower, Nezahal, Consecrated Sphinx. Those guys are out. You're probably winning the game. Seaboard Muse, you're probably winning the game. But before it was well, I think they used to run 10 to 12 big guys, the big flips. But it's like, what are they doing? What is your Thorn Mammoth actually doing? Like the Comas. I love Coma, but what's it doing compared to a Void Winnower, Nyxboom Ancient?
Yeah.
Hullbreaker Horror. I think Nezahal is probably the only one that doesn't actually win you the game, but a Rhystic Study on the battlefield that they can't pay for is insane, right? I think it's the only one that isn't winning you the game, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you're
I,
on
I
all the
mean, running
clones.
Archaic
Yeah.
doesn't exactly win you the game, but it makes it impossible for your opponents to win counter wars, so that's pretty relevant.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But
Yeah.
wanting archaic. Oh, that card's so good. So that's our time. I appreciate you doing this, man. We have to do another deck tech. We gotta jam some games. I would love to. I'm in the Play to Win Discord. You guys, I think you play once a month. But I appreciate your time, Tyler. Is there anything other you wanted to plug? I mean, I know you're play to win. Obviously, y'all are the biggest fucking Magic competitive people ever. But is there anything else you wanted to plug? Maybe play mats or shirts?
They do
or
all the
anything?
plugging for me mostly. We do have new playmats that Gold Saber did that I really like that are like a casino design.
Oh,
So
those
if you
are
haven't seen
insane.
them, go
Oh,
check them out.
yeah, I'll put the link down below.
PlayToWinMTG.com. Yeah.
Yeah, those are dude,
Um,
those are sick. I love the gay to win mats. Those are so fucking cool. Every time I see one, I'm like, yo,
yeah.
that's sick. That's
I
awesome.
was stoked when we finally did that. I think I had told them 2 years ago, like maybe we should do something for Pride, and we ran out of time. And then the next year I said, listen, what if we just do Gay to Win? And they were like, are you sure that's okay? I was like, yeah. I mean, you could say it was my idea because like
Any
I'm
flag,
less
it's
likely to
cool.
get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not a
um,
slur. It's awesome.
no, exactly. But
That
yeah,
it's not like fuck you or fuck that or fuck them. No, it's not negative in any way. It's gay to win. Like fuck you.
yeah,
I love that. I love it's okay to be whatever you want to be. We're playing Magic. I don't care if you're black, blue, gay, trans. We're playing Magic. I'm putting spells in the stack, and that's the biggest thing. Like I used to bring my wife called it strays. I'd be at the LGS and I would bring home some people, and she's like, you don't even know who they are. I played Magic with them for 4 hours. They're cool. They're okay to be at the kitchen table. And she's like, okay,
yep,
honey. Like, I'm a good judge of character. But she's like, what are you bringing these fucking bums? I'm like, I don't know. They have a magic deck. I don't know. I don't know their living situation.
yeah,
But that's awesome,
awesome.
man. I appreciate the time. That's Tyler Play to Win. That's a Kinnan Deck Tech. Y'all have a good day. Thanks for listening. See you later.